My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your F.A.T.E. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing out there? On today's show, I have retired English professor, poet, and author of the new book, Paranormal Perspectives, Where the Spirit Led, My Improbable Journey into the Coming Age and What I Learned. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be one for the books. Brad Burkholder, welcome to your F.A.T.E, my friend. How you doing today?
Hi. Nice to talk to you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. You have such a fantastical story that I'm very excited to get into. And I always like to, we're going to get into the book and everything that it has to offer, but I really do like to start with everyone's personal journey as to how they got here and what their experiences was spiritually. So can we start with your own personal journey into your spiritual evolution? You talk in the book about being somewhat of an empath or an intuitive, or you had some spidey senses and saw some things from the time you were very young. So let's start there.
Okay. I would say that I never thought there was anything unusual in my experience until I met a certain trance channel and the spirit that she channeled. I was in my mid-40s by then. But
Oh, wow.
even as a kid, though, when I was a very small boy, I talked to what I believe was a ghost who actually approached me, spoke to me, asked me a question that I was not prepared to answer because I was so small. I was on my tricycle. I turned around to look at my mother, who was hanging laundry on the line. This was back in the 50s. And I turned immediately back around to look at this man, and he was gone. He didn't have time to run out of sight. But I was a kid. I just accepted that. I thought, wow, that was weird, and didn't think anything more about it until years later when I realized that my mother had kept talking about this man who walks around the corner of the house, and I thought she was talking about an optical illusion. But by the time I was in high school, I started wondering about that, and so I asked her to describe the man, and it was the very same man I had spoken to. Years later, I learned that he was my great uncle, who had once lived in that house. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had died before I was born.
That's amazing. So you always had a predisposition, shall I say, to being able to pick up on other energies. Wouldn't you say that was the case?
Well, I certainly did on that day. And other than that, I don't know. I can't, it's hard to compare your experience in life with someone else's.
Yes.
So I suspect a lot of us have experiences like that. Some of us don't talk about them. I've never been bashful about it.
You also talk in the book about how you were on a bike and the bike took this like crazy turn that had it not taken that turn, you would have likely lost your life that day. Yeah. And when I read that, I was like, oh, he had an angelic intervention that day that saved him.
I did. Yeah. It was a motorcycle. I was 24 years old. And a car just didn't see me coming, and it pulled out from a stop sign. I did not have time to stop. Really, I didn't. I'd been riding a bike for several years, and I knew I couldn't stop. I slammed on the brakes. But what happened was the motorcycle, when it was no more than 3 or 4 feet from that car, it just made a 90-degree turn and took me up the side street that the car had come out of. That that's not consistent with the laws of physics. And I must tell you that I got off that bike, sat on the curb for a long time, very shaken, and there was nothing I could do but thank God, because I knew that I had been spared.
100%. I've done a fair bit of shows now, and I can't tell you how many times um, I've talked to people that have had very similar situations where their lives have been saved, altered, somebody came along at the precise time, or they would have died if it wouldn't have happened. And it goes back to the premise that I have heard from several people that are very into the spiritual world that say nobody dies until you're supposed to die.
Right.
And you were not supposed to die that day, so you needed a little help
Yeah.
to overcome that certain situation you had found yourselves in. We have free will. We can do whatever we want. And on that day, you were on your motorcycle trucking along, but you were not meant to go anywhere that day. So you had a little help. So that
Right.
is such a mild, nothing burger story compared to what we are about to get into with what has transpired in your life. That's like peanuts compared to what we're going to really be getting into. Now, I love a good channel story. Part of the reason that I ended up becoming so intrigued with spirituality and energy and multidimensional and the whole gamut is because when I first started burgeoning into my spiritual awakening, I started listening to channelers and what they had and who they were channeling. I read like Seth Speaks, and
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
was some stuff on Gaia and it really, really broadened my horizons. And I will admit fully that when I first started watching somebody channel, I was super pessimistic, not open to it, thought it was a hoax, if you will. And the more and more I learn about spiritual laws, what we're doing here, who we are, the more all of that stuff that I learned in the very beginning of my own awakening rings true, rings. So, why don't you tell us the beginning of how you came across this entity that you called Raymoth, and you describe this entity as a God-oriented spirit that was channeled through this woman named Yvonne, who
Hmm.
eventually became your wife.
Right.
So why don't we let's start at the beginning and tell your story. It's fascinating.
Okay. I was, uh, this was in the 1990s. I was, I was divorced. I got into a relationship with a woman, and it was intense and painful. And now that I look back on it, it's hard to define what was so painful about it, except I think that there was some sort of mutual uh, lack of trust between us somehow. And what it came from, I didn't know. All I knew was that I wanted this woman very, very badly. And she was elusive. Um, I saw her all the time. I talked to her every day. We went out several times a week. It wasn't, that, but there was some barrier between us. And I was pretty hurt by that. I actually went to a counselor for a while. Uh, and then one of my colleagues where I taught, I had been seeing a trance channel. And she said, you maybe you really ought to go and talk to this person. So I set up an appointment and uh, had no idea that I was meeting my future wife. I was going to her for advice about a relationship with yet another woman.
Yeah.
But yeah, from the very beginning, I knew that the spirit Raymoth was something extraordinary. He began talking to me about God. He talked to me about Jesus. And he brought up the subject. Uh, he talked about reincarnation, and he told me all sorts of things about my past that certainly this woman sitting in front of me couldn't have known. and some things that really nobody knew. You know, they were just between myself and me as far
Yeah.
as I knew. But he understood all this stuff, and he let me know that yeah, I was having trouble in this relationship, and it was due to a past relationship with the same woman, different life. Could he tell me about it? He said, no, not yet. That I was going to have to uncover some things first. So Yvonne came into town. She lived in a different city. She came into town once every 2 weeks. So I booked another appointment with her for 2 weeks later. Um, at that point, I found out what the uh, what the situation was. Here I was now. You identified me as a poet, and I do write poetry. But if you look up a list of American poets, I don't think you're going to find my name on the list. I'm not. I'm not a widely published poet. I'm not. In that respect, I'd say I'm not an accomplished poet. But on the other hand, I'm an educated poet. I went through 2 graduate creative writing programs studying poetry. I've been a practicing poet for over 50 years. I have won some awards. I have published in some magazines and so forth. And I've taught several hundred people to write poetry, so I know something about it. And the truth is that this woman knew me as a poet, and uh, uh, anyway, I found out that I was a reincarnated poet who had had a relationship with this same woman in a different life. That relationship had been troubling in precisely the same way that my current relationship with her was troubling. He had the same complaints about her. And uh, suddenly I knew who he was talking about. And it turned out to be a poet who is remembered, um, not famous like Abraham Lincoln is famous or anything like that, but a poet who's, who is sometimes imposed upon high school students and college students. Um, and, uh, and I was aware of him. Not only that, but he was one of my 3 favorite poets. And so I was aware of the situation that he had with that particular woman. So I began asking some questions, and finally we got down to, was she? And I named the woman, and Raymoth said yes. And so I knew who I was in a past life. It was the most, what shall I say? It was one of the most emotional experiences in my life. I mean, I completely broke down emotionally. I was weeping like a baby, uh, because because something that had been dammed up inside me had been released. Something that was in my
Yeah.
soul but not in my
Yeah.
mind was suddenly not just in my soul; it was in my mind now. It was a huge experience, and
I also think maybe you became so emotional because when your soul hears something true, you
yep,
have emotional
yep,
response to it.
precisely, and I've known, and all of the other discoveries I've made, most of them came along with a similar, uh, uh,
Reaction.
yeah, a reaction, not quite as
Yeah.
powerful, but similar. Um, so if I wanted to, I could probably name 20 past lives that I'm aware of, and apparently there might be hundreds that I'm not aware of. And some of those lives, I was a simple person. I was a farmer. I was a soldier in the American Civil War. Um, I I was a carpenter, I'm told, in one life, and I traveled with a caravan in a life many years ago with elephants and camels. Um, but I've been a writer in many lives.
Yeah.
I've been a warrior in quite a few. Uh, I think it's better to be a writer. Um, Right. You tend to die in bed.
That
It's
well, you were part, getting it's such a layered, complicated, fascinating life that you have led with your own awakening of understanding who you are and how many lives you have really led and how you keep on coming back here to resolve personal issues and problems with the same soul family.
Mhm.
I talk a lot about this show, like about reincarnation, and I have people on that are very that have a better understanding than I do of what our lives are and how we do come down here to learn, to grow, to expand, and to become more godlike, really, to really start
That's what,
to elevate our
right.
consciousness.
Exactly.
But let's get into Yvonne's ability to did you channel Raymoth, or was it always Yvonne?
It has always been Yvonne.
Okay.
And Raymoth started coming through to her, I believe, 8 years before I met her.
Okay.
And
Okay.
she was, in fact, she had an earlier marriage to a clinical psychologist
Oh,
who
interesting.
actually supported her channeling and helped her understand what was happening and understand that it was a rare phenomenon, but it was a phenomenon. It was not mental illness. It was a gift. And
Yes.
so Raymoth himself encouraged Yvonne to start having meetings, and he encouraged her to charge some money for those meetings. Now, I can tell you for sure, Yvonne could be the world's foremost channel. She could be the world's most famous channel. She could be the world's wealthiest channel right now today if she wanted to be. But I believe she would lose her gift if she commercialized it. And she believes that too. She didn't want to charge people at all, but Raymond said, if you don't charge them, they're not going to think it's worth anything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so she started taking appointments like I had, but she also had group meetings. And it was in some of those group meetings that I met uh, the three other people who, along with Yvonne and myself, later went to England on sort of you could call it a spiritual journey. You could call it a vision
Yeah.
quest because
Yes.
honestly, that's what it was. Um,
Yes.
but I really think that the reason my motorcycle changed direction underneath me that day and kept me alive was this book.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was in my
I
future. The the
Yep.
the reason that I understood early on that I was going to write, it led to this book. And probably that's why, even though I've written poetry diligently all my life, I never really cared about publishing, because if I had a publishing career to worry about, I couldn't write where the spirit led,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would lose part of my public because of that.
Yeah.
But I do think that I'm the luckiest poet on the face of the earth. I'm one of the luckiest men on the face of the earth because of
Yes.
the experience that I've had. Now, in 2023, Yvonne told me that our time together was up, and we went our separate ways. I came to realize eventually that was preordained too,
Yes.
because with the life that the two of us had, I was not really on a trajectory to write the book, even though Raymoth had told me back in the '90s that I had a book to write, and and where the spirit led is that book. He now tells me I have a second book to write, but he hasn't told me much about that yet. But anyway,
So you still see Yvonne on a
oh
regular
yeah,
basis.
we're
You
we're we're
talk
very
to.
close friends.
Great.
Yeah. There's never been any animosity between us. We just ceased being a couple, and I believe that was arranged in the same way
Yeah.
that so many other things in my life. have been arranged, and so because of it, I've decided to be a grown up about it,
Yeah.
and accept it as one of those things that was meant to be. And um,
And
if another girl comes along, I'd be overjoyed. I don't want to go into old age alone, but if that's,
sure.
I'm not out, I'm not on dating sites. Uh, I
Oh
guess
God, no.
God wants.
Oh God, no. No.
I mean, what would I say? Weird guy, weird guy looking for weird woman.
You would definitely need to have somebody who is living in the spiritual
Yeah,
community
yeah,
anyways for them to even align with your belief system at all.
yeah, for
You
sure.
know?
Yeah,
Like, I'm, I do want to round back and just talk a little bit about some of the tidbits that Raymoth had said in the book that I felt were worthy of repeating on the show.
right. And
Here's yeah,
that's
go
what
ahead.
the book is really about. The book is not really
Yes.
about my story. It only covers really about a couple years of my life for the most part, and um, and only the those aspects of my life that are really relevant to what I've learned. And this book is really about Raymoth. It's his message to the world.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So let's a few of the pieces that I picked out that resonated with me that I was like this should be said out loud many many times over and over again. So he says um humanity is in a destructive pattern that there's a cycle of despair, war, and we are playing out these patterns due to our lack of evolution and reliving old patterns due to our unconsciousness. I think that is true, beyond tenfold. Humans throughout history, we're just on this cycle of um war taking people over. We're barbaric to it. We're a very barbaric, war-loving, violent species. We are so unevolved in
Hmm.
our way of
Yeah.
treating each other, of seeing each other. It's when I was young, I felt like there was going to be a time where we would get beyond war, where we would go beyond, we would transcend these barbaric ways that we had always been throughout our previous history. And it's completely come back full circle. We're like drumming the beat for wars, and the unrest in the world has never been worse since I've been around. But another thing he said was he could only see humanity's future out 2 years because of the universal law of free will, that you can change your pattern based on your what you think, what you say, what you're speaking into the world. It causes ripple effects, and it really rang true that everything is connected. We are a global consciousness, and what you're putting into that global consciousness will dictate the reality in which you're living in. That's what it supported for
Hmm.
me when
Hmm.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Another thing Raymond says, Raymoth, it's Raymoth, right?
Raymoth. Yeah.
Raymoth.
Yeah.
He says, the purpose of our lives is to grow, change, and evolve by learning lessons and acting upon them,
Hmm.
to evolve our souls and to become more godlike. I
Hmm.
completely aligns with what I've learned. And this was super needs to be said like 800 million times
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
He said the puzzling human idea of having more than enough is somehow better here than having just enough.
So I
That
see.
this level of greed that is in our human consciousness that we don't pay attention to is leading to most of the wars and almost all of the negative behavior that we see in this 3D
Hmm.
um, world.
Hmm.
And I really can't stress that enough. It is weird that we do have this overall consensus within humanity that somehow having more than you'll ever need is somehow better than just having enough,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's a novel idea, but hey, humans, you should get on the train and like start adopting that whole premise, because that is going to lead to uh much more of an egalitarian way to live on this planet, in my opinion.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
you know?
very true. And the mother of all sins is greed.
Yeah.
If we didn't have greed, uh, what would be the impetus to murder someone?
Yeah.
What would be, I mean, what would be the impetus to lie to someone? Almost all things that we consider sins can be traced back to greed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, greed will always, eventually, it will lead to economic imbalances, which is really what's wrong with the world today. So
Yes.
few people control so much of the world's very finite wealth.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
when you have that imbalance, then all things are wrong. And
Yeah.
that's felt all the way to heaven.
Yep. Yep. 100%. There's one other quote in here that I just wanna, like, get out while I can, but it had something to do with the fact that, what's wrong with the world is that there is a lack of spirituality when it comes to our economics, when it comes to our government, when it comes to our education system, in all oh, there it is. It is the lack of spirituality that makes science, religion, economics, and politics so deadly today.
Right.
Like, I mean, that
Yeah.
to me was like, yes, an obvious true. I think if we had more discussions about reincarnation and how we're coming here to live and learn and grow, and less about this like crazy economic
Mhm.
system that's forced upon us that doesn't allow us to go beyond who we really are. It's
Yeah.
it's the programming. All right, so let's we're gonna jump all over the place, guys. There's a lot of information to cover here, so we're gonna dance in all kinds of directions. So let's keep up.
Okay. But
All right.
can we talk about this for a moment? I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
you've opened such a wonderful uh, avenue of thought. The world is moving toward a flashpoint,
Yeah.
after which it's going to get better. This is something
Yeah.
that Raymoth has, I mean, he stressed it from the very beginning. Something that what many people call the second coming is upon us. It's about
Yeah.
to happen. It may be happening today. And it's tied in not with God, obviously, but also with astrology and things like that, because astrology it's real. It
Yeah.
is
Covered.
one of the ways that the universe works, and we're coming upon a new cycle,
Yeah.
moving from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. We can expect the Christ energy to return to the earth because it returns to the earth every time we move from one age to another. Why? I don't know. I don't know that. But there's too much to know, and and
100.
and one person can learn only so much. And also, I can get only so much information from Raymoth at a time because he's very recently, just in the past few days, he said to me, "You cannot digest truth if you bite off more of it than you can chew at one time." We get truth in little bits.
Yeah.
Okay, the great spiritual leaders of the past, whether we're talking about Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, um, the, they brought up what was appropriate at the time. They brought the appropriate truth from God to man. What Raymoth told me, uh, oh, when I was in the process of writing Where the Spirit Led, there was a chapter in which I wanted to deal with the Ten Commandments. And he said, okay, Moses got the Ten Commandments. They were inspired. He got it from God. They were very prescriptive. Thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that. He said that was because at that time, the people Moses was leading really didn't understand ethics. They didn't embrace morality because they didn't know what it was. That they were not spiritually. evolved. Another word for that is enlightened. Maybe that's a better word to use. They weren't spiritually enlightened. So they had to be told how to behave. When you have a young child, you have to give that child rules. You can't explain the reasoning behind the rules until the child is able to understand the rules. Now, when Jesus stood on the Mount of Olives and he said two things, he said, love God, which maybe it's hard to love something as abstract as God, but respect God. Understand that God is your maker and God is what you answer to. So work for God and love your neighbors. Take care of the other people. Why? Because they're worth as much as you're worth. They're a part of
I
God the
mean,
same as you are. And when Jesus said those two things, he made the 10 Commandments not irrelevant, but was sort of obsolete. Because what he was saying is, this is why you're good to each other. This is why you respect God.
yeah.
Now he's going to
I
come back and he's going to say something that makes even more sense to us, because hopefully we've moved on a little bit in the past 2,000 years.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like we're regressing. I don't know. It feels
Right now
awfully,
we are, but
we're going.
it just appears that way because
Yeah.
let's in the book I mentioned another book written more than 100 years ago by a man named Levi Dowling. It's called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ.
I was going to ask you that next.
It was a
Yep.
channeled book.
Yep.
Okay, right on the coattails of Levi and his book came Edgar Cayce. Now, Edgar Cayce talked about his own past lives, but he didn't say much about them. I have a feeling he knew something that he didn't tell.
100.
I know this much from Raymoth, that once upon a time, Edgar Cayce was the gatekeeper at Troy during the time of the Trojan War. Unfortunately, he opened the gate and he let the Trojan horse through. But at the time of Christ, Edgar Cayce was there too. He was, now, Raymoth has told me this, he was the Apostle John. He came back in the 20th century. Why? Why did Levi write a book in the early 20th century? Because he was setting the stage for the coming time.
And we are in the age of Aquarius.
We are in the age of Aquarius. And you don't believe in reincarnation. Don't take my word for it. All I am is an English teacher. Look at the books written by Brian Weiss. The most famous of them, and the one to start with, is Many Lives, Many Masters. This was a man, he was of Jewish background, but he was an agnostic. Until he regressed, he used a hypnotic regression on a client who suddenly started talking about past lives. And then he kept up that study with other patients and other subjects. And he became he not only became a believer in reincarnation, but he became a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And learned that in a past life, he himself had an interaction with Jesus. Then there's another a psychiatrist named Michael Newton, who wrote a book called Journey of Souls. Michael Newton regressed people to the period of time in between their lives and found out what goes on in between their lives.
Yep.
Now, honestly, he described, he had patient after patient who described a place that the nearly dead go to, which is kind of like an airport or something, where many people come together and then they go off to many different destinations.
Yes.
You know something? I've been there in my dreams. We go out of body when we're asleep. It's a place,
Yes,
it's like what it reminded me of was a big train station. And all these people were passing through, and I was aware that they were dead and that I was not dead. I was merely out of body, and I was sort of helping them find their way. And Raymoth said, well, when you die, you'll be there again.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, one of the things that really has just left my body completely is any fear of death.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah, yeah.
absolutely know, that I have been here before, that I will be here again, that death is a transition. It's not an
Mhm.
ending. It's nothing to be fearful of. That most everything is conscious. I'm conscious, the tree's conscious, animals are conscious, everything is consciousness, and that God is that source of consciousness. We all are sparks of the
Right.
divine. We all have God within. We all are connected. We, we are all another version of ourself out there playing this role. We go back to God, we come from God. We're here to learn, grow, expand, and learn to evolve our souls to become more godlike. And
Mhm.
it has allowed me to let go. I was an atheist. So like I didn't have any of this beliefs. I was like, if I couldn't see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, it didn't exist. I didn't want to hear about it. I
Right.
was science. I needed facts. And then I had a health crisis, and it kind of spun me out into another trajectory in my life, which now that I understand more about what life is, I was supposed to get sick. I was supposed to awaken in this lifetime. And I even think I'm supposed to be doing this podcast right
I'm
now.
sure you are.
The idea that it's just taken on a life its own so fast without me doing much is kind of weird to me. Like this must be universal helping me along in this journey, like,
Right. Right.
but it is really, the more and more I learn about how truly magical, mystical, and unaware we are of what our lives truly are, and that part of the goal of this whole show is to you can't awaken everybody. Not everyone's going to awaken, but you can start pecking at the door for somebody to start their own journey of discovery. And I'm not, out here to bash religion or bash whoever, whatever you believe, it's your journey, man. It's your journey. But I do want to say, what about this? And what do you think about
Mhm.
that? And have you ever thought about this? And, to just allow people to start expanding their thought beyond this mainstream programmed idea of what and who we are, which is completely and totally false. We are so much more capable, and we are able to co-create the world that we're living in. But channeling to me is something that is been so informative, that like
Mhm.
even the little bits of information that we get from Raymoth, in your book, it's
Yeah.
like I eat that stuff up because um those are nuggets of truth that you're not going to find anywhere else out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's some of the pushback that I've gotten from family members, casual acquaintances, and people like that who have some inkling of what I'm into. Um, they say, "Well, yeah, but this reincarnation stuff. I mean, I don't believe in that. It's not part of my religion. It was supposed to be. Jesus
Yes.
taught reincarnation. It was church leaders who took it out of religion. Uh, the truth is that more than half of the people on the face of the earth do believe in religion. I'm sorry, said the wrong word. Do believe in
Reincarnation.
reincarnation. Uh, the and I've pretty much believed in it since I was maybe a teenager. It just made more sense. Uh, but I do think that when the big change comes, and it's coming this century, those people who embrace that change are also going to understand that they are reincarnated souls. They probably will reincarnate more in the future, and it is easy to get in touch with your past lives. All you have to
Yeah.
do is go to a hypnotherapist and ask for a past life regression.
Yep.
And also, if there's one thing that I would like people to come away from where the Spirit led with, it's the understanding And this is a tough understanding for people. It took me a long time to make this separation. God exists. People who say they are atheists, most of the time, are simply non-religionists.
Yeah.
Religion and God are two separate things. God made man, but man made religion.
Yep.
And if you can separate the two, if you can work directly for God and not for religion, if you can start saying the most important thing in my life is God instead of the most important thing in my life is my faith, because faith
Yep.
is always an illusion.
Yep.
Ultimately, God is not. God's the one thing that is real. And if we search for truth, it will inevitably lead us toward God.
I agree. And I have said many times on this show, I grew up in a kind of oppressive church experience, and I pushed away from it, and which is really what led me to
Yeah,
become an atheist in the first place.
right.
Um, but I have said a million times that I don't feel like religion has brought us here to spread love, joy, and harmony. It's here to control us. It fills us with fear. It fills us with guilt. We feel unworthy. Nobody feels like they have a direct connection to their God. They have to go through a priest or a preacher or an elder or something that's somewhat closer to God. And there's all these crazy rules, and there's all this made up stuff that was man made that, even Raymoth says, people will start getting religion right if they just take the best parts of each
Yeah.
religion and use and put those into practice and leave everything else on the table. Just walk away from it. Everything else is
Mm-hmm.
man-made. It's meant to
Yeah.
control you. It's not meant to bring you closer to God or who you are. So, let's get in a little bit about, let's round back on the Aquarian Gospel book, because I want to tell people what Jesus's real life was. Isn't that the book where it goes into Jesus's education that he got
Mm-hmm.
through his
Yeah.
travels as
Yeah.
a child,
Yeah.
which you never hear about in the Bible, that he really was a mystic. He was really learning about how the reality works and what it is, and he was trying to tell people, like, hey, be like me. I am Christ-like. I am the way. I can do this. So can you. You just have to learn what and who you are. At least that was my takeaway from when I hear about this book and what's in it. But why don't you tell us?
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. He was a highly educated man. In fact, so was John the Baptist, his cousin. Uh,
Yeah.
Someone who I think probably ought to be looked at more closely. Uh, and I think people who have access to channels, good channels, should start asking questions about, about biblical characters, about historical characters, about some of the things they'll learn are very surprising. Now, I've been told that, well, according to my pastor or my minister or, my preacher, uh, these channel spirits are all demons. Okay. Okay.
I know.
Go to, there's the Gospel of John in the New Testament, but farther over in the New Testament, there are two letters written by John. Go to his first letter, turn to chapter 4, and read the first part of chapter 4 of John's first letter. He says that whenever you are dealing with inspired speech, that means channeled speech. When someone gives up his or her uh, mind to allow a spirit to come through and speak, there's just one simple question to ask. If you ask, if you say, do you represent God and do you believe in Jesus and did he actually walk the earth? A God-oriented spirit will say yes, but a demon cannot say yes to that question. We'll talk around it. We'll gaslight. And if that happens, don't deal with that channel. Don't deal with that spirit. End the session. Go away, and
Yeah.
surround yourself with light because you've been
Yes.
close to something evil. Well,
He-
ask that question. If you go to
Yeah.
a channel, ask that question. And if you don't get the right answer, you've lost your money. Don't spend
Yeah.
any more time there. Just say, excuse me, I've got to go. Uh,
You have had some experience with the darker side. I mean, at the end of the day, it's duality. You can't have light without dark. So if there's light, there's going to be dark. And you do speak in the book about dealing with darker energies, Satan, things like that. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you've learned dealing with entities that are of darker
yeah.
vibrational Satan, evil,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
world, that
I'm always much more enthusiastic about talking about things that are of
of
the light
course.
than things that are of the dark. Although I recognize that people are very curious about it. Um, Here's what I would say. I think for our experience on Earth, yeah, there probably has to be at least a little dark, because otherwise we don't discern. And if we are not discerning, we're not being students. And if we're not being students, we're not progressing. Our souls are not evolving back toward God.
Yeah.
But where God is, I hope there's no darkness.
Well, God is light.
That's,
I mean, isn't
yeah,
that what
right,
God is?
right, right.
God
So
is light.
I hope that in our futures, there's no darkness left. So when you say you have to have dark along with the light, I think that's a fact of life on Earth. It might not be true
Yes,
everywhere in the universe.
100%. Here in this 3D plane, we live in duality.
Mm-hmm.
Left, right, up, down, black, white, good, bad. There's duality, 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 and everywhere in every crevice of our life here on this human plane. That's what I was referring to. And you
Yeah.
really can't have light without dark here. Like there's even within us, everyone talks about doing shadow work. You have your darker tendencies. Everybody has these within them. We're not perfect, all light all the time, individuals. All of us have dark within. It is the choice that you make on a daily basis of who you're going to let come forth, your light or your dark,
Mm-hmm.
as to what kind of person you're going to be, but I
Right.
certainly, along with everybody else, have my shadow. It's
Yeah.
called doing shadow work for a reason. Everyone has a shadow, and it's there for a purpose. But part of that is we live in a duality, system here on this
Mm-hmm.
plane. At
Right.
least that's what I've gathered.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
learning,
Yeah. I
you
think you're
know,
right. I think you're right
you
about
know.
that. And I think there are people who have probably, you know, in an earthly life have probably evolved beyond that shadow.
Yeah,
In other words, they have completed their shadow work,
that's right.
and maybe those people don't have to come back here. Maybe they get to go to a better school, a
Yes,
school of higher education,
yes.
somewhere else, maybe a different planet, maybe a different solar system, maybe a different universe. I don't know.
Speaking of evil, Raymoth says that evil is equated with being ignorant and unevolved. It's an unevolved soul, or an unevolved consciousness, it all evil people are immature or unevolved, is what the book said about evil. And I
Yeah,
thought that was
yeah,
something to highlight,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Maturity is something to really strive for
Hmm.
in life, and the way to become mature is to cease self-victimizing. Raymoth also talks about students and victims, students of life and victims of life. And he says that basically you can lump people into one category or the other, although there's in everybody's life, there's going to be some overlapping, because nobody is a student 100% of the time. I suppose it might be possible to be a victim 100% of the time, uh, but the path for self awareness or enlightenment or the evolution of the soul, which these are all just different terms for the same thing.
Yeah.
That path is to be a student of life. A student of life will make mistakes and will probably suffer consequences for those mistakes. But if that student of life analyzes the mistake, analyzes his own actions, analyzes his own reasons, and then can avoid making that same mistake in the future, he has evolved.
Yes. I say it all the time on this show that we need to start analyzing what we're thinking, how we're feeling. Why am I
Yeah,
feeling that? What is this supposed to be teaching me? Am I supposed to be learning something here? We seem to just unconsciously react to whatever stimuli it is, whether it be our phone, the TV, traffic, whatever, without actually truly being aware and awake in the present moment. And that is something that I do on a daily basis now is I try to live in the moment that I am currently. I'm not living
exactly.
in the back anymore. I'm not living in the rearview mirror and I'm not worried about the future. I'm living right here and I stay present and I keep very close attention to how I'm vibrating, what I'm thinking, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling myself. And all those things help you advance on your journey of spiritual awareness and who you are,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
And,
know?
and in that respect, you might be doing a better job than I'm doing, because from the very beginning, Raymoth has told me that I've been told many things and I chose to believe them. He believes that in my own journey through life, I am held back by things from the past that really aren't relevant anymore. That old truths are weighing me down. Uh, I've tried to work on that, and I can see some differences between myself now and myself 30 years ago when I first came to Raymoth.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's right. When we fall into the old habits of the past, we are allowing ourselves to be victimized again by the same things that victimized us in the past. And
Yep.
as he says, the purpose of life is to grow and evolve.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of that growth can sometimes be super painful. Like growth isn't, sometimes going to be the most joyous experience that you have. Like it's hard work, it's practice, it's going through traumatic experiences that are starting to make you wake up to think beyond what you have previously in your life. It's shaking you awake. It's like questioning everything. It's starting from scratch. At least that's how it was for me, and it continues to be for me. I'm still learning, I'm growing, and I'm starting to understand more and more about uh, what we're all doing here, what this 3D plane is, the fact that we keep coming back here and, you know, you coming back here with the same soul family, having experience after experience that aligns with your previous lives and the most too magnificent not to be true kind of
Mhm.
tale that you've had in your life. Like, it's so out there that it has to be true, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, you know? It's remarkable, and every single time I have the conversations like this, I'm just blown away at how perfect our lives are and what it is trying to teach us and what we're supposed to be accomplishing. Like, from what I understand, they say that every time you come down here, you know what you're coming down here for. You know what you're supposed to learn in this lifetime. You're going down here with the same people interacting, just with, oh, you're going to be my mom in this lifetime, and I'm going to be the son. And in the next lifetime, I'm going to be your uncle. And it is just so much more complex than you ever would think it than what we're taught, than
Mhm.
what I don't think we know what and who we are. We just don't.
You say it's complex, and I guess it is, but it's also very simple too,
Yeah.
because once you know it, you can understand your life. I
Yes.
mean, by knowing my past lives, I know who I am in a way that
Yeah.
I would have never known before. And I think that that's going to be uh, the rule rather than the exception in the not too distant future. I think people are going to start remembering their past lives. And if they don't remember them, they're going to start wondering about them and finding out, because it's not as hard to find out. as you think it is.
It does take an open mind though, and I think that is the biggest barrier to the discovery of who you are, is being able to digest new information. And when you belong to a religious organization that tells you channels are the devil, or that they're just telling you that to get you off your path to God, or they are, I mean, I was never succumbed to the religious programming that's out there, but so many people have religious trauma in their lives
Yeah,
from
yeah.
from
Oh,
the
yeah.
fear and the unworthiness and the guilt and the shame and all of these unnecessary emotions that religion feeds you and tells you, you know, you're unworthy. And a lot of people, including people in my own family, have trauma from their religious indoctrination. And that, I think, is probably the hardest thing to break free from, is to be able to think for
It's
yourself. There is no reason that you're
the
listening to somebody else for your own salvation, if this, for lack of a better word.
yeah, yeah. Well, the, as I said before, it took me decades to separate the idea of God from the idea of religion.
Yes.
And the truth is that they don't have that much to do with one another. Religion is something that man created in order to satisfy his desire to organize everything. And God will not be organized. God is bigger than we are. We can't understand everything about God. And to try to reduce him to religious dogma
Yeah.
will fail. And uh, and I'll tell you something else too. It's dangerous to accept money
Mm.
for the purpose of trying to bring people to God.
Yeah. I
You know,
mean, it's a racket, right? It's a total
well,
racket. Give me your money and I'll get you into heaven. Like, that is just a racket in itself.
oh yeah, yeah. You see that all the time. I've seen it on television. I saw one. You know, one evangelist said that when you send $1,500, that seems to be the tipping point, and miracles will follow. You can't buy God. You can't buy him. He's not greedy.
No, he's not interested. I mean, that is like the whole money racket game here on this planet is just a racket in itself. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
Our financial system is just a joke and in a system of slavery, if you get it down
yeah,
to the nitty
yeah,
gritty,
yeah,
where two people are benefiting and everybody else is just
yeah,
getting
yeah.
completely just raked over the coals
Right.
at every turn. Um, let's talk a little bit about there's so much. There's so much. Let's talk about some of the people that are like famous that Raymoth has said were reincarnated. Like you talk about George Washington and Roosevelt, and then after that, I want to get into some alien talk. We're coming. We're literally just clicked over an hour, so like let's talk a little bit about Raymoth. What has Raymoth told you about your lives and other people's walk-ins, all that stuff, and then we'll get into aliens, and then we'll die with the aliens.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's very common for people to reincarnate within their own families. So I mentioned that I had been a soldier in the American Civil War. That man was my, I hope I get enough greats in here. He was my great, great, great uncle. He died young. Interestingly, I got to spend 20 years or so living on the farm that he left to go to war. So you see, that was my karma. I got to come back and finish farming that land that he didn't get to come back to. Um, Things like that will happen. People, sometimes people in positions of leadership will be in leadership again. For instance, George Washington came back as a general who fought in the Civil War. Uh, he uh, he returned as Franklin Roosevelt. Uh, there are other, and before that, he had been Robert the Bruce. George Washington had been. Um, he had had lives going, back into biblical times, and was actually someone mentioned in the Old Testament. But I don't feel comfortable talking about that. I know George Washington today. He's a friend of mine. He's not wealthy. He's not a leader, uh, but he is a very contemplative and spiritual individual. Um, I've known quite a few writers. Let's take William Shakespeare, for instance. He had been Homer. He had been Quintus of Smyrna. He had been Virgil. He was Luke, the who wrote the Gospel according to Luke. He was he was the Italian Renaissance poet Dante. He was Shakespeare. And since that, I'm not 100% sure that that he is fully reincarnated, although there are people who have aspects of him, and and that's something else that we probably don't have time to talk about today. But
Yeah,
we
I
could
mean,
spend an hour talking about
yes,
soul aspects. Yeah,
yes, and how that's a whole nother layer of
yeah,
a box of goodies that we need to uncover is, and I have that is actually is one of my questions, but that is another turn for another time,
yeah,
future.
yeah. And incidentally, to go along with that, I said that George Washington became FDR. But the young FDR was a different soul. That there's something called a walkout and a walk in.
Yeah.
When FDR got really sick in about 1920, and that's when he became crippled, there was a soul exchange. The soul who had been in that body left. The George Washington soul came in because that was the soul that could lead us through the Depression,
Yep.
lead us through World War II.
If this information would have been the first time I've ever heard somebody reference a walk-in soul or anything like that of that, I would it is such a, hard to
Mm-hmm.
accept concept.
Yeah.
You just are like, "That is a load of shit. I don't know what you're talking about." Like, that's your initial reaction, and it was my initial reaction, and it's only until you start hearing the same information from different people, whether it be a channeler or somebody who has deep knowledge of, ancient text or whatever, that you start hearing the same exact concepts through a thread through every single like spiritual discussion when it comes to human souls or reincarnation or how the system works or whatever you want to say. So it's hard to understand. I'm sure if somebody who's just listening to this stuff for the first time is like, "Eh, get out of here." But I am telling you, these are concepts that are a part of who we are, what we are.
Mhm.
And the sooner we start recognizing them, talking about them, learning more about them, and making them more of a mainstream kind of discussion, the more that we're going to completely transform humans as we know them because they're going to understand what and who they are.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Mhm.
It's just this is what excites me about this show is the new information that I gather that gives me insight about what we're doing here because quite frankly, nothing else that I have ever been told ever made sense to me. I mean,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
I mean, it
Same
just
here.
didn't,
Mhm.
you
Same here.
know? I for the longest time thought Earth was a bit of a petri dish and it like supported life and things grew up and died and went back to Earth and it was like this just cycle of life. And in a lot of ways it is, but there's so many more layers to that story. Truth is stranger than fiction in when it comes to the nature of reality and what and who we are, in my opinion. Um, let's dance. I'm kind of switching gears and I feel like we need to get into alien land. You talk about aliens in your book. I 100% think that within the next couple of years, we are going to have full contact. I'm not afraid of it. I feel there's malevolent and benevolent species of aliens out there, just like there's malevolent and benevolent humans out there.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like good and bad kids, it runs the gamut. You can't be fearful of something, but there's a lot of fear being generated by people that are unaware of the nature of reality and that they are literally fellow species that we're just the dum-dums that don't know about them. They've known about us for a millennia. But can you talk about your experience, what you know, what the Palladians are, what the Greys are, the plots that was thwarted by you, all of it. I want to hear all of it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. To put it simply, Pleiadians are good. They are creatures of God. They know they are. They're more evolved than we are. They are on our side. They're like our big brothers in the universe. Um, Pleiadians are good. The Greys were not good. I don't think they're present anymore.
You're not the
Uh,
first person to tell me that either. You're
w-
like the third person that said they've been banished from the Earth realm.
uh-huh. Yeah, and that happened in the year 2000. As a matter of fact, it happened on the 18th of April,
Wow.
the night of a full moon. I think it was April, maybe it was May, but it happened then. And Raymoth put together a group of people. I was a member. Yvonne was a member, and three other people who are mentioned in Where the Spirit Led. Uh, we we were involved in dealing with not the Pleiadians, but the Zetas, the Greys. There were other groups as well, about a dozen other groups. I think they were doing the same thing. They're scattered across the globe, and we happened to be at places where a bunch of ley lines intersected. That's something I don't know much about. I just know that's the case of it. I do know that in the United States, there was a group in Florida. There was a group in Arizona. There was a group in Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula. There was a group in South America near the border of Peru and Ecuador, I believe. There was a group near the pyramids in Egypt, and there was a group near Stonehenge in England. And when my group traveled to England just a few months after we did this work, I fully believe that we were having dinner at a pub out in a little village, but it was close to Stonehenge. I believe two members of that group were having dinner at a nearby table, and I'll tell you why. Because these were men about our age. We were in our 40s. These men might have been a little younger than we were. I'm not sure. One of them said to the other, and there were two women and three men in my group, and we three men looked at each other in disbelief when we heard one of the men say to the other, "I think I'm going to have to break up with my girlfriend. She's not spiritual enough." And we said, outside of the three of us, can you imagine a man breaking up with a woman for that reason?
Well, it's true though. If you're not, it would be I'm a divorced woman and I'm not looking. I'm not really interested in a relationship right now. I'm interested in me. So I'm just living my life. But if I ever were to meet somebody, they would have to be awake. They would have to be conscious. They would have to be understanding the
They'd have to be
basic.
the same thing you are.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have the same t shirt. Um, yeah. Been there, done that, got the t shirt. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, I want to button it up with the alien conversation. We got off
Okay.
track, but the Palladians, good. The Greys, from what I understand, are really were here to
They were here to destroy us and take over the
destroy
planet.
humanity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't have any, and they didn't have souls. That they were not created by God. They were created by the people of another planet, and and that civilization no longer exists. They were destroyed by their own biological artificial intelligence.
Kind of like AI is going to do to
Imagine,
us.
imagine, yeah, yeah. Except I'm more hopeful that AI is coming right now at at a time when we are changing from one cycle to another. I don't. I hope we still have modern conveniences 100 years from now, but I don't know that we will. Uh, and I hope we're thriving 100 years from now. All I know is that we'll be better off spiritually 100 years from now than we are today. Uh,
Yeah.
I hope that we're all economic equals 100 years from now, and that will allow us to be equals in so many other ways as well, including spiritually.
Yes. I agree. I am for it. I know that there's going to be, you know, through any light that comes, sometimes you have to experience a lot of darkness before you get to that light. And
Yeah.
I think we're coming into a point where we're going to see a lot of dark things happen around us. But I think through that darkness, there's going to be an immense amount of light will be at the end of that.
After the dark night of the soul, there is always an awakening, a rebirth, and you're always better off.
Yeah. Yep.
So
It's gonna be painful,
it's
but it's
painful,
gonna be
but
better
it's
off.
necessary.
Yeah.
And I don't say that glibly because I'm not looking forward to the pain either. And I know that there are people who will suffer and there are people who will lose their lives because of it. And I don't think that's a minor thing at all. I mean, it hurts my soul. It keeps me up at night. But if the future is better, then we'll be coming back to a better place in future
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think that we're at a stage. I don't know if you have ever read any Dolores Cannon's work, but she is a
Uh,
past life regressionist,
yeah, yeah.
hypnotist, and what she always talks about is the fact that the earth is going to do a split, and that the people that have raised their vibration, that have done their work, that have stepped into who we are, that have become enlightened and expanded their consciousness, that are vibrating at a level which will take them into the 5D dimension. And
Mhm.
then you're going to have a world that stays in that lower vibration of greed, war, despair, shame, guilt, violence, and that those that earth will still exist, and that 5D and 3D won't. We will be vibrating at such different frequencies that we will no longer be able to acknowledge or see each other. Like, I don't know if that's the
That
case,
that
but
that
that's what she keeps on telling
I
everyone,
think it's a strong possibility.
you
I've talked
know?
with Raymoth about dimensions, but not deeply. But he did say this. He said, "Well, when the second coming occurs, that there are those who will move on, and there are those who will stay behind."
Yes.
Interestingly, that's the whole concept of the rapture is not biblical. I don't know where it came from, but many people believe it, and their idea is that some people will ascend, and that the sinners will be left behind. Um,
I mean, I don't
well,
know if it's
maybe. I mean,
sinners.
we're all sinners. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I
nobody's
don't
perfect, but you're just saying it a different way that
yes,
will raise our vibrations, which
raise our
I'm
vibration.
told is what Jesus did when he disappeared from crowds several times
Exactly.
when the authorities were trying to lay their hands on him and suddenly he wasn't there anymore. He raised his
Yes.
vibrations and simply moved into another dimension for a while.
Yes. I mean, I firmly believe that Jesus here Christ consciousness was what he was trying to tell us. He never had a church.
Yeah,
He never said, go to
yeah,
church. He was basically like, look what I can do.
yeah,
This is who
yeah,
we are. Be like me. Look,
yeah.
love your brother, love your neighbor, feed the poor. We're all connected.
Right.
I am you. You are me. And he knew he went to all the great mystery schools. He learned about ancient hermetic things and like
Hmm.
mysticism, and he was one of the great teachers that we've had that have come to the 3D plane. Buddha,
Right,
Muhammad,
right.
all of them were great masters of the universe and in their own right. I mean, it's just, it's time to allow people to start stepping into a new paradigm and understanding what and who we are here. And it's stranger than fiction, which is why people need to go and pick up your book. I
That's
mean,
true. That's true.
they need
Yeah.
to go and pick up your book and read it. It is a fantastical story. It is filled with truisms, that you should embrace, learn, and replicate in your own life. And your life story is like, they should make a movie out of it. Like, we didn't even really get into like the nitty-gritty of the Camelot and the prior lives and the
Right.
arc you guys made, and the battling the Greys, and how you were able to take them out and thwart their whole thing here on Earth. So, I mean,
Well, we had a lot of help.
we yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. But it was just a remarkable story. You do say in the book, um, I am willing to take a polygraph. My
Oh,
friends are willing to take
absolutely.
a
Yeah.
polygraph. And you do speak of the hesitancy to come out and talk about your story, knowing that you would lose friends and family in your
Mhm.
lives based on their own beliefs. So, why don't you talk a little bit about being that person that's speaking a lot of truth and what the impact that does have around humans around you that aren't there, they're not open enough, they're not aware enough to understand what you're even saying to them.
Yeah. Well, I believe I have some friends and some relatives who are paying me the absolute greatest compliment I've ever had. They think I am a good enough fiction writer to have written this book. I I I am not a good enough writer to write Where the Spirit Led. And if you want proof, uh, hey, I've got a novel I just finished. I'll send it to you. You can tell I'm not that good a fiction writer. I, but
I mean, what do you say to the naysayers? What do you say? Do you just at the end of the day, I guess you just have to let them have their journey, because
I,
not everyone is going to be open to it. It's just life.
for the most part, we're very polite to each other. You
Yeah.
know, they don't. No one has called me a liar to my face yet. Uh, but uh, we don't, typically don't discuss the matter. Uh,
Ye-
I have my private life, and then there's this other life that doesn't intrude on it. Uh, I find lots of times when I'm with a group of people, I can't talk about the things they're talking about. If their discussion is their investments and so on, I can tell you right now, I don't have any investments. I have less now than I had 2 years ago. I live in basically a one-room apartment right now. I've got a
Yeah.
car. I've got just what I can fit here. I've given up almost everything, and I don't miss it a bit. I don't.
I mean,
And I have friends who could buy and sell me 100 times
10 times
over.
over.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
I don't envy them at all. The burden of ownership is it's onerous.
I
I
mean,
don't want it.
the greatest life gift you could give somebody is to make them understand that having an egregious amount of money is never going to fill you up or make you happy. It is just going to make you want more of the same emptiness, thinking it's going to fill you up. It's not. It is not. We have been hoodwinked We have been completely tricked into thinking that we need all of this stuff, all of this money, all of these gadgets, all of whatever. And that is a lose-lose
Yeah.
game of never going to fill you up, man. It's just but no one's gonna be able to learn that until you get to that level. Not that I've ever been at that level, but I've also been super not materialistic my whole life. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't own a designer bag. I don't own designer shit. Like, I don't understand why people pay outrageous amounts of money for a label when they make it overseas for, like, $1 and then they just sell it back to you for an egregious like, it's a racket. It's like a status symbol for to make them their egos feel good. It's a game, it's a
Yeah.
racket, it means nothing. I don't understand it, and I never have, but it's real. Like, people love their closets full of shoes and their bags and their 10,000 square foot homes and their yachts, and it's a never-ending game of needing more and more and more to fill you up to make you feel good. It's just a vapid, soulless life, man. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they think that they're having the time of their lives for, but then eventually it catches up to you.
You,
It's a slow burn maybe,
you
but
can't
it'll
take it with you.
sure can't. You
Can't
sure
take it
can't take
with
it
you.
with you.
You know,
Mm-mm.
Edgar Casey said that at the time that the European settlers came to North America, the Native Americans were the most spiritual people on the face of the earth. And in many of their civilizations, a person's value was not measured by how much he had, but how much he gave away.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Think of that.
I mean, I think that the tribal Indian nations, that were here before we were here, w really is closest to
Yeah.
how we're supposed to be
Yeah.
living.
Yeah.
That is
Right.
the closest to how we're meant to be living closer to nature. We're meant to be living, as more of a living with the land, through the land. We communed with nature. We are supposed to be of that ilk, and instead, we've just destroyed nature. We've destroyed our connection to it. And I think it's a lot of reasons why you have so many people like unhappiness is because we are so disconnected
Mhm.
from what we're supposed to be connected to, which is the earth, which is our connection to everything here. I mean, we are supposed to be living entirely different than the way we live on the planet. Let's just say that. We're
Yeah.
just
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's
sad.
true. That's true.
It's sad. But, we're coming on an hour and a half. I can't tell you enough how great it was to read your book. I'm so glad you're out there telling your story. Tell it more, tell it louder, tell it every day. And, you are a light, and I think you are meant to write this book and speak your truth. So,
Well, thank you. And if I can say a few words at the end,
sure.
not only have I thoroughly enjoyed this, but I'd love to hear from your viewers. I have a
Mhm.
website, bradburkholder.com. And I'd be, I'd love to interact with people if they have questions. I'm approachable. I'm just a guy who sits here, and uh, uh, and so I would encourage people to read the Aquarian Gospel, but I'd also
Yes.
encourage them to read this little book. It's much shorter. Where the
Yes.
Spirit Led, uh, and uh, um, and I would like to hear their feedback.
I would like to meet Yvonne and get a session with Raymoth if it's
You know,
possible.
uh,
I would love that.
I will pass that along. She's sort of retired right now,
Ah,
uh,
yeah.
and it's partly from just the fact that so many people had come to view it as a form of entertainment. Uh,
Oh, I just wanna know my future and when no, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
I'll talk to her. I'll
I mean,
talk to
I
her, and
think it would be
I'll get
fantastic
in
or
touch
my
with you. I'll let you know
I
what she
would love
says.
that. I mean, or my past life, any of it, any knowledge that could be given me through Raymoth Yvonne is would be delightful, and I would love to hear it. So, I'll just put that out in the universe. I'm putting it out there.
I think you'd be the perfect person for it.
I let's put it out there and see if it happens.
We'll do that. We will
Um,
do that.
Thank you so much for your time today. I had a really lovely conversation with you. Come back anytime. We can talk about walk-ins and soul retrieval. We didn't even talk about your
That's
soul
right. That's
retrieval.
right.
That's another thing we
Yeah,
didn't talk
we need
about.
to talk about that. Yeah.
That is huge.
Mhm.
So take two. We'll do it in the future. Let's
Okay,
stay in
great.
contact. And with that, gang, thank you for coming on board, Brad. We'll see you next week on Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. Journey well, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you.
And that is a wrap on this episode of Fate from Atheism to Enlightenment. I mean, I know I jumped around a lot and we covered a lot of topics in this episode. It was a lot. There was so much going on in this book that it was hard for me to even touch on everything, all the little bits of morsels you could chew on to have a discussion around in this book. Spirit retrieval, we didn't get to, walk in souls, aspects of the soul, who he really was in prior lives. Like, he was some very famous people. Like, it was too tall of a tale not to be true. How many T's can you fit in there, huh? It was, you could have a TV series written on this dude's life. Like, I mean, I hope that my audience is starting to get to the point where they could maybe digest a little bit of this a little bit more, that life is really this truly remarkably crazy, like couldn't be true kind of things are happening. I mean, the more I learn about past lives, what happens when we die, the spiritual laws of the universe, dash in some aliens. It's like, I don't know. It's getting a little crazy, and it has completely transformed my life. I really do live in the now. Like, I don't worry about what happened 10 years ago anymore, or what I did 2 days ago even. I live here. I don't live in the future. Like, I should sort of be freaking out about my career and the world of movie making, but I think to myself, I don't know. I think I'm on a new path now, and I think I'm going to follow this path, and I think it's going to bring only my highest and greatest good, and I think that my thoughts and my words and my speech is going to create my future, and I feel like my best days are ahead of me. I do. I really do. My best is ahead of me. So the hearing these kinds of stories and talking about this kind of information, it fills me with not cynicism but curiosity. It fills me with excitement that it could be so magical, that it could be, that life is truly stranger than fiction, that um, we are energetic beings of light that are here in some sort of, I don't know, earth school, I guess, in a way, and that we are kind of in a cycle of war, despair, greed. We keep doing, like, we can't seem to, like, get it together as a planet and understand that violence and gluttony and greed is not the way to go. Like, men, no offense, men, but you have been running things way too long. Like, we need some feminine divine to come to light and bring more of a empathetic, compassionate way of looking at life and how it should be lived and what we're doing. And it's not about having a big dick or whatever. Sorry. So, all right. His book, amazing. Read it, open your mind, lots of tidbits to learn about. And also, if you can hear my dog barking, it's because my mom just pulled up. Sorry. Sorry about that. Oh, and finally, Brad and I talked after the show, and he said maybe possibly in the future there was going to be a potential for possibly something to happen with Raymoth and maybe Yvonne, maybe. And if that happens, I will be over the moon with like gratitude and joy that I'm even getting that opportunity. Like, and who knows what we'll learn, but I'll do it on the show. It'll be amazing. With that, folks, thank you for watching another episode of the F.A.T.E podcast. Pick up the book, learn a little, expand your mind. It's pretty deep. You're going into the rabbit hole. Come on, it's just fine. It's fine. Come on. Welcome to your fate, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye.